Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. Today, we're presenting Using Immediate Needs for Home Care Services, hosted by Lou Pierro, Frank Hemming, and Jennifer DeRosa of Pierro, Connor & Strauss. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you experience any technical problems during this webinar or have a question you would like answered on air at the end, email us info@pierrolaw.com. We also kindly request that you take a short Webinar Jam survey that will be sent to you when the session has concluded. Providing feedback helps us plan for future webinars. So without further ado, we will turn it over to Lou Pierro.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on our Medicaid Monday series. Very happy to have you with us today. And it's a topic that is kind of a culmination of a series of webinars. We're going to give you a rundown on what we have covered in our prior Medicaid Mondays. And then we're going to go through today's topic, which is immediate needs. And we did talk about this. If you were at our Elder Law Forum back in June, we talked about the process of Medicaid application, the problems in that process, and the immediate needs application that has arisen as a result of that. And today we're going to walk you through that, what the experience is, how it works, why it works, who it benefits, and how it implements. Most of the audience today, I think, is a professional audience, so we'll try to give you enough depth and detail. We do have some consumers on as well, so we'll try to make it at a level that accommodates both. And we're going to start out with a brief review of the 2019 Medicaid eligibility numbers. And those are very, very important because we have to meet that initial threshold and meet that criteria before we move on to the MLTC application or the Nursing Home Transition Diversion Waiver application, or in today's case, the immediate needs application. What is countable, what is not countable, we'll do that quickly. And I'll give you the citations to where you can find more information on those topics as well. We will then talk about the typical managed long-term care, and that is the MLTC jargon, the managed long-term care application process, and what is the current timeline for service if you're going through the MLTC process, and then talk about the immediate needs and the timeline for that, the forms required, and then the reorientation, which is a transition back to MLTC. So in our past Medicaid Monday webinars, we have done everything from Medicaid home care, the basic eligibility rules and accessing Medicaid home care, navigating nursing home Medicaid for chronic care applications. We did a full 30 minutes on the MLTC programs and the process for MLTC, and then also talked about the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, the Pooled Income Trust, and then from hospital to rehab to home. And that was with one of our geriatric care managers, Nora Barato, talking about the issues when people do go to the hospital, then have to transition back and getting the services in place. If you think about it, today's topic, immediate needs, comes into play in many cases in that scenario. So if someone goes to the hospital, they go to rehab, they be discharged, they want to be discharged home, but they can't afford the services that they need to go back home, what happens? And we're going to walk through the process. And what I'd like to do now is introduce my senior associate, Frank Hemming, who is our Medicaid attorney, who has been doing Medicaid applications and has developed a deep knowledge. So he's going to walk us through the eligibility numbers for Medicaid. Frank.
Thanks, Lou. So just as a kind of refresher, we've done this in every webinar that we've done previously just because the numbers are important to know and it's important to refresh if you're a little unfamiliar with them. So for income purposes, if you're one person at home, you get to keep a whopping $879 a month of your monthly income. If you're a couple at home, meaning you have spouses and they're both applying for help at home, you don't double the number. Unfortunately, under these rules, the combined income allowance for two people is $1,287 a month. That MMMNA number that talks about what income is allowed to the community spouse if there's a spouse in the nursing home. So that number is $3,160.50. And then the Medicaid person in the nursing home receiving Medicaid gets a whole $50 a month of their personal income to keep. Everything else then gets paid to the nursing home. For assets, or as we have on the chart, resources, if you're an individual at home, you get $15,450 of assets, not including the exempt amount of assets, or types of assets that we'll talk about. If you're a couple at home, again, you don't double the number. It's $22,800 for two people. And then the community spouse, when there's one spouse at home, one spouse in the nursing home, they get to keep $74,820, or the combined amount up to about $126,000, as you see on the slide. So that's the recap.
So as a prerequisite to getting into any of these programs, managed long-term care, transition diversion waiver, or applying for immediate needs, you have to meet the financial eligibility criteria before you can apply. And this runs on a month-to-month basis. There is a snapshot date, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, which is the first of the month. So all of the finances have to be in line by the first of the month that you wish to apply in. And then you have to look at what is available as a resource and what is not, which we'll get to next. But Frank, I just want to point out one anomaly in the system, and we've been railing against this for many, many years. And that is, if you look at those income numbers for a married couple, single individuals, pretty simple. $879 of income for home care, $15,450 of resources. If you're in a nursing home, and we're going to focus mainly on home care today, but if you're in a nursing home, then there's a little different income allowance. It's not much.
No. You would think that they would have just doubled the number. If one person can get $879, then two people get $879 times two, but that's not how they've done it. Instead, they give you kind of 1.5, so it's $1,287
for a home care couple with both living at home. Look at the next number. If one goes to the nursing home and the other is living at home, the income allowance for two people, which was $1,287, goes up for one person to $3,160.50. And a lot of our clients look at that and say, what is that about? Why is that what it is? And how do we navigate this? If we're a married couple, we want to get Medicaid for one of us to stay at home, we can only keep $1,287 of income. And the answer is the Medicaid system came into the law in 1965. It's been a patchwork quilt of programs layered one upon the other. And back in 1988, they had something called the Medicare Catastrophic Coverage Act, which protected seniors from being impoverished if one spouse went to a nursing home. Unfortunately, they only included the nursing home. They didn't include home care in the spousal protections under MECA. And so we have this anomalous system for income and resources, $22,800 combined resources for a married couple versus $74,820 up to $126,420 for a married couple with one spouse in the nursing home. It makes no sense. Get over it. You have to move on and figure out ways to navigate the system with all of these restrictions in place. And Frank, not everything is countable. So what can people keep and still meet those eligibility criteria?
Sure. So you have your allowance. So that's $15,450, like we just talked about, for a single individual. That could be cash. It could be cash in life insurance, or for your cash value off of your life insurance. That's a better way to put that. It could be a small stock account. It could be bonds, savings bonds we see every once in a while. So it's basically any amount of cash up to about that $15,450 limit. Your home is exempt as long as you or your spouse or disabled child lives there. So for many people, if we're talking about home care, it's not a countable resource because you're going to be in your house receiving the care. You get one automobile, regardless of value. So the joke here is that you could have a Lamborghini in the parking lot of either your home or outside the nursing home. It doesn't matter if you drive it or not, but you're allowed to have a car. You can prepay your burial and funeral because, again, Medicaid always wants to make sure that those things are taken care of after you pass away. If you have a business that's operating and producing income, your business is exempt. You get a very small amount of life insurance that Lou would be very happy to explain to you why that number is so low. And the fact is they haven't updated that number since 1965 either.
And back then, when I was a young boy, that was enough to bury you. You could get buried with $1,500. Today, it's a little bit more than that. But that was the funeral allowance back then. They allowed you to use life insurance for that. Now they allow you to prepay your funeral and burial expenses, but they never upped the life insurance piece of it.
And just to note there, that is the face value has to be less than $1,500, not the cash value. So that's important to know, because when you get your notice of your current benefits and your current values on your insurance policy, you're going to see two values. It's the face value for this that we're worried about. And then most importantly, for a lot of people, your IRA or any other tax-deferred retirement account that you have, as long as you're receiving periodic payments from it, then the asset amount, the actual value inside the account, does not count as an asset in this calculation.
So that's one of the major ones. The home is the other major one. We talked about all of these in our earlier sessions for both chronic care, nursing home Medicaid, and home care, and how to navigate the system to prepare yourself for Medicaid eligibility. So I would highly commend to you those prior webinars that you can access off of our website at pierrolaw.com events to get more substance on those. But today, let's move forward to the topic of the managed long-term care application timeline. And I've been around Medicaid now for 30 plus years, and I've watched the rules change. And when the Medicaid redesign team was convened by the governor and they came out with managed long-term care for New York State several years ago, they rolled out this plan that put the fiscal intermediaries in between the consumer, the individual who needs care, and the money. And that is the state, county, and federal funds that are available that come through the Medicaid program. So the managed long-term care system is a capitated system where the MLTCs, the managed long-term care companies, get a fixed amount of money per person per month. They then have to manage the care with those dollars and put in place a system that takes care of all the needs of that individual up to 24-hour-a-day care in the home under Medicaid, which is still available in New York State. And also it was for a time nursing home care, but they've begun to retract that. And so the MLTCs are primarily dealing with community-based care. It's important to know all of the rules and the history, because as we go through this, you're going to see that there is something in number 2 there called a conflict-free assessment. And the company that performs that assessment is Maximus. When managed long-term care was enacted, that didn't exist. Why does it exist? You may ask, why does it put another chink in the armor here? And that is because in the early days, managed long-term care companies were able to enroll individuals who were otherwise very healthy. And those very healthy individuals ended up on the front page of the New York Times riding their bicycle to a senior center, getting a free lunch, and riding it back home. And the New York Times did a 3-part expose on this new managed long-term care system. And as a result of that, the state brought in this Maximus evaluation, which is a conflict-free assessment. And that's the low bar. That's to make sure that the individual has sufficient needs to qualify for long-term care services in the Medicaid program. And then once you get the conflict-free assessment, and this is presupposing that you've done that initial eligibility determination, then you have to go to the managed long-term care system and have a second assessment done. And then you would enroll in that MLTC, or if you're in a location that has PACE or FIDA, and we won't get into details on those, but those are programs, and the PACE program locally is actually expanding right now, which is a great thing, from Schenectady County into Albany and Rensselaer. So that's something that we're very excited about. We don't have FIDA upstate. We do practice downstate in Nassau and New York City, but those are other programs. We're going to focus today on the MLTC. And when this all got enacted, I did some lobbying for the State Bar Association, unpaid, of course. And I used to go up for the Bar Association, the elder law section, to the legislature, and we would meet with the senators and the assembly persons. And one of them that I liked very much, who spoke at our elder law forum several times, was Senator Kemp Hannon. He was the chair of the Senate Health Committee. And Kemp would say, if you can't put it on one piece of paper, don't bring it. And so we put it on one piece of paper, and this was it. And this tracked for him the long-term care process, starting with the initial application to the county, to the Department of Social Services, using a snapshot date in our example here of September 1. And then the county has 45 days to turn around their decision. But Frank, that's not always the case, because sometimes we need to use a pooled trust, which shelters income, in which case there's another piece to that application.
Right, because then in order to use the pooled trust, which we use to save a person's excess income over that 879 figure that we talked about right at the start, we have to use a pooled trust. To use the pooled trust, though, there has to be a disability determination that's done on paper by the local county and the Department of Health to determine that the person is in fact disabled, so that they can use the pooled trust. The pooled trust is great. I would say we use it in 90 to 95% of our home care cases, because many people if you receive Social Security and you have a decent pension, you make quite a bit more than $879, and you want to be able to pay your bills.
Well, you need that money,
right,
to pay your bills.
The problem is, though, as soon as we start using the pool trust and we have to get this disability determination done, it adds another 45 days to the timeline that the county office has to process that application in full.
Do you think they're using that 45 days, or are we getting them sooner than 90 days?
I think a lot of it's dependent on the size of the application, the county we're working in. I would say in general, we do our best to make sure that everything they need, they have when as soon as we submit the paperwork to try to expedite that. The problem is, though, that as soon as they have the 45-day window originally, plus the additional 45 days, even if we're just checking in on something, they can always fall back at the county level and say, we have 90, we're not through there yet. We understand you're just checking in, but we're under our time frames. And it could just delay just because of caseload and other things like that at the county level.
So if you're downstate and you're applying in New York City, you don't go to DSS, you go to HRA, the Human Resource Administration. And most of the practitioners in the New York City marketplace don't submit their pool trust application with the initial application. They submit it after because they don't want to delay it because HRA has a backlog. So this is a decision point for the people counseling the individuals through the system. Do you put in the pool trust application with the initial application or hold it back, get the initial determination with the 45-day time frame, and then put the pool trust application in? The only thing you need to prepare for is you will have an income spend down during those initial months once you get approval until the pool trust gets approved. So we went through a lot of these things with our MLTC webinar. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but if you follow through, we get our conflict-free assessment once the county approves Medicaid. Then the CFA is done and it goes over and we choose an MLTC plan. They then have time to do their assessment. This is one of the pitfalls, of landmines out there. If you don't hit it by the 19th day of the month, you roll an entire month to get service under an MLTC. So in this case, we, of course, put the fact pattern in where we went to November 20th, in which case we had to roll all the way over till January 1st. So even if we applied today, effective September 1, we could be looking at January 1 based upon meeting all of the statutory guidelines for our service in place. And the question becomes, well, how do you have someone who needs care coming out of a hospital or at home wait 4 months to get service under the managed long-term care system? Lo and behold, the state responded to this crisis and enacted something called immediate needs. So I'm going to turn it over now to Frank and our paralegal, Jennifer DeRosa. And Jennifer has been with us she came in from Rensselaer County Department of Social Services. So she has been on the other side of this fence, dealing with the applications from the county side, and now works with our clients here. So with that, Frank and Jennifer.
There we go. All right. So as the slide says, in 2015, new laws were changed that actually put in place new procedures to actually get the immediate needs decision making and all the way to process the application in place. So now that we have a way that we can actually apply for people to get immediate needs help, if we have that scenario that Lou was describing where somebody needs help, they need it fast, they don't have a lot of time to get everything in place, and they don't have 4 months to wait. So we're going to go over a little bit of the things that we've been finding actually help to fast track all this through. And it's Jen's job to yell at me if I say something wrong or I don't cover something. All right, so let's go here. There we go. All right, so what do we include with our immediate needs applications? First off, whenever you're dealing with the county, and Jen and I have been seeing this relatively frequently, you have to have the right cover sheet when you send something to HRA. I think a lot of that is just because there's different processing units and things, and everything goes into a hub, and if you don't have the right cover sheet, it doesn't get routed properly, and then half the time we can't even check in on something because not the right people have it.
Correct, and it will hold up the process.
Right.
Yep,
So So we don't see this issue as much upstate, just because we have smaller offices, or our office, we have very good communication with all the local offices, or typically we reach out to an office we haven't dealt very much with before. HRA is a little different. So right off the bat, if you're dealing with HRA, you want to make sure that you're routing it to the correct place.
Right. And then we need a Medicaid application,
right.
Complete Medicaid application with all your income, along with a supplemental A application which has all of your resources for the past 5 years, 60 months on bank accounts, IRAs, stocks, bonds, annuities, mutual funds.
And sometimes, let me just back up.
Yeah.
So one thing with that is, if we're only doing immediate needs at home, we don't need the 60 months of statement. Sometimes we will submit the 60 months if we think that nursing home may be needed sooner than that. So just to clarify that.
Correct.
Go ahead.
We also need a physician's order for care, and that is a document, a form that we would send out, and the physician completes it to let the state know that they do need home care services at this time.
Right, because if you think about it, the whole point of this program, of Medicaid in general, is we're trying to get needy people help in their house. So if we're going to say that not only do we have a financially needy person by looking at the income and asset numbers like we've been talking about, now we're showing that they're a physically needy person. And now they don't have time, they don't have the safety in place to actually get through the 45 or the 90 days. So one thing that the state has put in place is this new law that says that you need actually to have a physician's order saying that you need these personal care services and you need them now.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I mean, we've talked with doctors' offices. Have you had really any experience dealing with a doctor's office that hasn't been cooperative?
No, the doctor's offices are cooperative, and they can write you up,
Mm-hmm.
write up your situation, your circumstances, and they usually don't have a problem doing that. No.
Yeah, I think in general, doctors' offices typically, if they know what's going on, they're going to help any way they can. I would say if there's a tip here, just if you're the family, or if you're the healthcare proxy, if you're the neighbor, whoever's helping this person, to stay on the doctor's office to make sure that this is getting done, because we can't submit or get our approvals until they have this piece of paper.
Correct. And also we need, it's huge, the signed attestation form of immediate needs. And we're going to go into this on a slide in a few more moments to get in depth with that, but that's really the biggest key piece of everything.
Right.
And the HIPAA release, we'll go to the next one. The HIPAA release is a signed form of which gives the doctor's offices, because they need that permission for the past year, of what the client's been going through.
Mm-hmm.
And why they're medically needy. And that's what the state recommends.
Right. And then the last thing that we have there is that we also recommend putting in your cover letter that this is an immediate needs application. Other than the signed attestation form and the physician's order for personal services, there's really no way to distinguish an immediate needs application from just a regular home care application. So we want to make sure that if we're applying for immediate needs, that our application is actually getting routed correctly. So that attestation form, let's talk a little bit about it. So the attestation form, there's usually one place where an immediate needs app isn't going to go through. It's because they don't meet the criteria for the attestation form. So one thing that the person has to attest to is that they have no informal caregivers available that are able and willing to provide services to them. Right. So this is one of the places where we hear all the time, if you're living with a family member, if your son lives with you, if your daughter lives with you, if you have a neighbor downstairs that helps you out, if you have other family members close by and people come in once a week to help you, and they rotate shifts, that way there's always someone at home, that disqualifies you under the attestation form of qualifying for this. It's really, you have to swear on this form that you don't have people in place that are able, willing, and available to help you. Okay? Another one is that you're not currently receiving help from a home care services agency. So we meet with many families where they've had a crisis situation. They've already contacted a home care agency to come in to start providing the care. While we certainly would always recommend that you keep your person safe, once you have that home care agency in place, well, now you don't meet the criteria for immediate needs, because you have to say that you don't have someone in place. You don't have an agency in place.
Correct. And I think that's the biggest problem that we face with immediate needs application, is the fact that they might be paying privately for home care services, and now they're running out of money, and or they don't have enough money to continue to pay for the home care services. And that is a big issue, because we can't do an immediate needs because they're privately paying.
Right. So if it's one of those situations where someone's running out of money, we would put that in our cover letter to show, look, right now they're currently paying. That's going to end. We have to keep this person safe. Right. That's really the only way to handle that. We also have to attest that there's no third-party insurance or other Medicare benefits available. So again, there's somebody else that could be taking this burden on through the healthcare system. That's why Medicaid doesn't necessarily want to be doing it at this time. If their need is that great, they will take it. But if not, then you have your normal 45 to 90 day waiting period. And then the last one that we wanted to put in there is that the form may be submitted while you're actually in the hospital or in the nursing home. However, we are getting blowback from counties because if the idea is that you're attesting that you're in need of personal care immediately, if you're in the hospital or in the nursing home, then that person is in the eyes of many counties safe and cared for.
Yes.
It's actually having to wait for that person to return home until we actually apply for the paperwork. So again, I think we've been trying to have communications with the county offices, letting them know what we're doing, but we have been getting into discussions about how best to handle a situation like that. So we're running a little low on time, so let's speed through some of this stuff. So once we send in our app, we send in everything we need, we send in our attestation paperwork, our medical orders. The county then has 7 calendar days after the receipt of all that stuff to determine Medicaid eligibility. So that means that they have to actually put your application through the review process and issue that approval. If they don't have what they need, they have 4 calendar days to give their missing or to issue a document request, and then actually get in contact with us or whomever's doing the application to let you know we can't approve this yet. We need some other things.
Correct.
So obviously, if we're involved, we do the best that we can to make sure that the workers know, look, the minute you know you need something, reach out to us. We'll get it for you ASAP.
I also want to add that you only have 30-day window between the signing also with the doctor's note that we talked about. There's only a 30-day window between that and the attestation immediate needs form. If you go over the 30 days, you have to apply within the 30 days of those being signed, or it's not considered anymore an immediate needs application as well.
Right, which makes sense. If it's truly immediate need, we wouldn't be letting that lapse that long. But yes, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Then within 12 calendar days, now the county actually has to get back involved. They're conducting their in-home assessments. They have to contact the home care providers, and they have to authorize either personal care services or the consumer-directed program. Whichever is where we're looking to take this, with which home care program to use, which we have in previous webinars. Then the county is actually doing this processing up front because, again, we're not going through managed long-term care system under this scenario because we're moving faster than they normally would take. And then DSS is actually the one that would actually be arranging for the services to be provided. And this is how it used to be under the old model before managed long-term care, where the county office took care of all this stuff. This has since been taken away from them.
And with the immediate needs, it's not just the bathing we're looking for. We're looking for help with grocery shopping, help with transportation to doctor's appointments, help with doing the laundry. There's different needs for home care services other than having an aide that's going to come in and just do personal hygiene care.
Sure. And then lastly, I think this makes sense if you think about it. If we're under the immediate needs program, eventually you're not going to be considered an immediate need anymore because you're getting the services. So once that happens, you actually have to transition over to the managed long-term care system. So you have to go through your enrollment with your MLTC company. You have to do all that. The only thing that wouldn't be necessary here is you don't actually need the conflict-free evaluation under Maximus because clearly you were in need of services because you've been receiving them. We just want to make sure that the actual transition from immediate need back to managed long-term care is happening. It's happening.
And if you don't apply with an MLTC within 60 days, you're going to be automatically assigned one. So it's very important that you pick the plan of which you choose and do your homework on that, because if they put you in a plan of which you don't like, that could cause issues down the future.
Exactly. All right, so we'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Jennifer and Frank, for that speedy explanation of immediate needs. And it's a speedy application. And that's the whole purpose. This rule is still very new. It came in just a couple of years ago, and a lot of counties don't have much experience yet with the immediate needs application. So some of the counties we apply in, it's their first time through. So we're working on it together, more or less.
We actually had a county ask us what forms we were going to send in because they hadn't seen them.
They hadn't seen it yet. And no, down in HRA in New York City and on Long Island, Nassau, and Suffolk counties, they get more volume. So they've had to deal with these more. And the numbers are greater. And the idea here is that we need to have care for people when they need the care. And a lot of people can't wait that 4 months. That's the lag time to get services in place through the MLTC system. Hospital discharge planners need to know what this is. Rehabilitation discharge planners need to know what this is. Families and people counseling families in the home need to know what this is and how it all works. And we're kind of learning as we go. There is not a body of case law or interpretive law that we can go to, fair hearings and things, that have interpreted these rules So my theory on this is it's a program there to help people. People who are in need may not meet all of the technical requirements on an every case basis because they're very rigid and they are subject to interpretation. So I think if it's a close call, it's worth taking a shot because the system wants to take care of people. And we've met with county agencies, offices for aging and departments of social services in all of our areas. And they want to help people. They want to be able to put things in place for people. And this kicks it all back to the county. And it puts some of the burden back on the county, but it also gives the county the opportunity to take care of people in their own region, in their own counties with the immediate needs program and to get services in place for people who are at risk. And it's a great idea. It's a great program. It has to be fleshed out a little bit more. And what we're doing here is working with families to identify the opportunity to use immediate needs. Sometimes you have to massage the application a little bit and get the physician to cooperate to show the immediate need, but that's a little bit of the work. There's probably a little more groundwork here because it is so new and you have to build a compelling case for, number one, the need for immediate services, and number two, the lack of available services in the home for the individual, whether it be paid or unpaid caregiving. All of that has to go as part of the application. So knowing the differences between a single applicant and a married applicant is critical. Preparing and assembling the required forms, getting the care identification of the home care options, and keeping the plan on track, which with good, aggressive, and consistent care management. And so our team, and it takes a team to do this, it's very time consuming and it's very specialized in a variety of ways. So I work on this along with my partner, Aaron Connor, and Frank does the heavy lifting. And we don't have Jennifer's photo, but you just saw Jennifer, so you can identify her at this point. But Jennifer has become a very integral part of our Medicaid planning team. And we also offer care management and advocacy. And this is a growing part of our profession, the legal profession in our firm in particular. And we have Susan Vale and Nora Barato who have significant experience in healthcare systems, rehabilitation, hospital systems, and home care. And they work with our clients advocating at every stage of this process, identifying the need, identifying the opportunities, finding the care, putting the care in place, working with our Medicaid team to get the appropriate Medicaid program in place, and then making sure that that plan stays on track. And so we are here as a resource for you. This is a list of our prior webinars again, and we would recommend them to you if you want to get information on any of those topics. All you have to do is log on to pierrolaw.com and you'll see where you can click through to get those other webinars. We want to thank you for joining us again. We will be announcing our fourth quarter webinars very shortly. We're putting the topics together now. One of the topics I know is going to be what happens if you get denied. And we're going to talk about the denial process, the appeal process, what happens with a managed long-term care appeal, the internal appeals, the fair hearings, and Medicare appeals as well. So that will be one of our upcoming topics along with more information. Thank you for joining us. We hope you can come back for our next Medicaid Monday.